Yes, Wrong Turn has been given a remake, and I am here to tell you that although this movie calls itself Wrong Turn, do not be fooled. Some people go into the woods and take a wrong turn, but beyond that, this movie is nothing like the original 2003 movie, despite being advertised as a remake and despite having the same writer as the original film. It is false advertising to the extreme, and in this video, I am going to explain how. Let the battle commence. The story for the original Wrong Turn opens with our main character Chris, who is on his way to a business meeting. To avoid traffic, he takes a different route and accidentally crashes into a car that is broken down in the middle of the road. The owners of the car appear, and after some brief exchanges, the characters decide to walk to the gas station to call for help. They soon realize, however, that they have entered the habitat and home of these cannibals. And throughout the movie, it's a game of survival as they try to escape and survive against these things. And the story for the Wrong Turn remake is that a father is looking for his daughter and her friends who have gone missing. We then flash back to 6 weeks earlier where we see those kids and what happened to them. And at about 16 minutes in, I was thinking, didn't the first movie already have our characters in the woods at this point? And it turns out that at 16 minutes into the first movie, not only were our characters in the woods, but 2 of them that stayed behind were already being stalked by the cannibals. So the remake already is moving at a much slower pace, and that is not helped by the several pointless scenes that we get throughout this movie. For example, later on in the movie, the father has 2 experts go on a rescue mission with him to save his daughter, and they die almost instantly, and they don't accomplish anything or take the father any further into the woods. So what was the point of wasting time introducing us to these characters if they had no bearing on the plot and were going to die as soon as they stepped foot into the woods? The remake really makes horrible use of his time in this way. So yeah, the pacing in the remake is very poorly executed. In comparison, the original movie starts out with a cool opening sequence of 2 climbers, and this established its tone very nicely, giving us some early peeks at how these cannibals operate whilst keeping them concealed in the woods. And then we get an opening title sequence, remember when they did those, and it really nicely sets the tone for what we are about to see, and it also shows us some backstory for the cannibals. So the movie starts out very strong, and the main character that we follow, he is trying to make a trip to his business meeting, and he gets stopped several times on his journey, and he has to deal with characters that make fun of him and are problematic, and he handles them very calmly, and he shows that he's a nice person. And this does a great job of making you like him, as well as the rest of the characters. When he crashes his car, they ask if he's okay, and they ask him repeatedly. Some of them get aggravated about their damaged luggage, and our main character again shows that he is a decent person and continuously apologizes, and even says that he will pay for any of the damages. And a few minutes later, we find out that he's put most of his money and savings into that car. So right from the beginning, even though these aren't deeply developed characters or anything, they are very nice people, and as a result, you don't want anything bad to happen to them.
Drop your pants.
Except for these 2. Yeah, as soon as the crash happens, these 2 come across as the assholes. And I am so glad that they were the first to go, because they are just the horny teens of the group, and the movie very wisely disposes of them quickly. But the rest of the characters are great, and I like how both Chris and Jesse are very cautious pretty much from the very beginning, and they come across as very smart characters, and they prove this in their later scenes when they go on the defensive and try to draw out one of the cannibals. And to show in comparison how much the remake has such well-written characters, the introduction scene starts out with the daughter saying this charming bit of dialogue to her boyfriend.
I must really love you.
You really do. It's weird how much you
You're weird.
love.
Now kiss me.
What idiots. Yeah, good. It's just a shame the car didn't crash and kill them. And as you can tell, this is not a reaction that you want when you're introduced to horror movie characters. Right at the beginning of the movie, we have so much in-your-face representation, as well as dialogue that further throws it in your face. And they are so obnoxious that instantly you get annoyed by them. You are supposed to care for these characters, but when they were getting insulted, I actually was enjoying watching them get insulted. We also have a gay couple, and they are holding hands in practically every single scene. And the movie's doing this to clearly make a point. And after a while, it's like, okay, we get it already, message received. And the other characters constantly go on about their political tropes too. You don't see their characters as actual people like you do in the first movie. Their dialogue just comes straight from Twitter posts. The characters in the original movie felt like real, ordinary people. That's why you follow and care for them, especially when you see them helping one another. But you just get your typical crappy teens with SJW tropes thrown in because we're living in 2021, and cliched teenager tropes weren't enough apparently. Now they gotta add in political teenage tropes.
This is fucking awesome!
That is just a trailer shot. It came out of nowhere in the actual movie. And what is even awesome about it? We later get a scene where a tree falls down on the characters and kills one of them. And this scene came out of nowhere and it didn't have any build up. The best shot of the movie was this. and then the scene just ends. That made the shots infinitely less cool, and the next morning, they all of a sudden lose their phones. Clearly someone has taken them, and the characters are yelling, well, how are we supposed to call for help? But you can't help but think, why didn't you use your phones the previous day to call for help? You morons. And of all the characters, we reach the girlfriend of the black guy, and I can't remember her name, nor any of the others, but very quickly, I decided to call her Karen. You'll know why soon enough. So Karen tells her friends that the person she saw outside their tent last night must have stolen their phones. They suddenly realize that one of the characters are also missing, but then when this dude shows up and asks where his girlfriend is, Karen says, I'm sure she's fine. How can you say that after someone came last night and stole your phones, most likely to stop you from calling for help, that very same person who most definitely dropped that tree on you, killing one of your friends, how can you then say when your friend is missing, that it's okay, I think she's fine?
I'm sure she's fine.
This is the time you worry and go looking for your friend, not say,
I'm sure she's fine.
So you don't think that's Karen worthy enough yet? Well, keep listening. The boyfriend of the kidnapped girl falls into a trap, gets his leg attached to a chain, they pull him into a pit that leads to nowhere, they tie him to a log, put a bag over his head, and they are carrying him to God knows where, and he breaks free, kills one of them, and once they find out that the girlfriend was still alive the whole time, Karen here says this.
Did you just kill this man for no reason?
It's the audacity in the tone of her voice that really kills me.
Who knows what they were going to do to me?
All we know for sure is that you just killed someone.
They were going to kill me!
She's accusing him of murdering the very person that kidnapped him, put a bag over his head, and was going to do God knows what, and she blames him for killing him, just because it turns out that they didn't kill this friend. That doesn't negate everything else that they have been doing, and for the next few minutes, she shows her disgust for the person he killed by putting moody looks on her face. It's such nonsense. And a few seconds later, her boyfriend activates a trap and he gets stabbed. These people set the death traps, Karen. Have you put that together yet? And trust me, there are so many other dumb character moments that we can talk about, such as where this idiot really was. It was downright terrible writing, and her reaction when she came back was so out of left field. And you are uncertain at first, but it turns out that Karen is the main character of the group. That's right, you enjoy that little tidbit, and these characters are nothing when compared to the characters from the first movie. They aren't super deep or anything, but they are genuinely good people and they have lives of their own that they relate to each other, and you hope that they can go back to them. In comparison, aside from being young teenagers, what life did Karen have at home that was so important that we should care about her?
Listen, I'd love to talk to you about that offer. Get your own coffee maker with all the perks.
Well, that settles it then.
We've gotta get you home!
An hour and 30 minutes into the remake, and it felt like I was watching for 2 hours, and we still had 15 minutes left. The pacing in the 2003 movie just flies by, and that's thanks to its very tight hour and 20-minute runtime. It does not pad itself out like the remake does, so the story, the pacing, and structure is far better in the first Wrong Turn. And the characters, including the main female character in the original movie, is far better than the Karen and the rest of the characters in the remake. So the movie with the superior story and characters is the 2003 movie. Now, the Wrong Turn movies are horror films where the characters are trying to survive against cannibals in the middle of nowhere, and these cannibals operate by putting some barbed wire on the road where they can stop drivers in their tracks, kill them, and then take their corpses back to their little hut so they can eat them. The cannibals themselves, they all have a different presence to them, and two of them are talented in their own way. One is skilled with long-range weapons, and the skinny one is very energetic and climbs trees to hunt his prey, something the other two cannot do. And the maniacal laughter from the crazy one is just unnerving every time you hear it, and somehow funny at the same time. And all the creature work for the cannibals themselves are done by Stan Winston, and he used real human deformity as a reference point to design the mutated looks of these cannibals, and it just adds an extra level of authenticity to their rotten look. As far as the horror goes, the tension and constant feeling of fear is very strong in the 2003 movie, and there was even one false jump scare that really added to the intensity of the scene, and there is some genuinely funny humor in this film too, and the comedy doesn't take away from the seriousness of what's going on. And the scene where the characters have to watch the cannibals cut up their dead friend and eat her is just horrendously smart. And when they find a lot of souvenirs of the cannibals' previous victims, you find out that they have even had children as their victims in the past. Now in the remake, we have mysterious masked figures wandering around the woods hunting our characters, and once they finally get captured, I was like, ooh, are we finally going to see the cannibals now and see what the film can do with modern day makeup and prosthetics? I really can't wait to see the reimagined look of the cannibals. And then we see this.
Stop your screaming, or you'll suffer for it.
I know you. Help me. Please help me.
Do you want food? Water?
Yes.
then shut your mouth. Understand?
It turns out that's the person that has been following them around, but it's not a cannibal. What is this? Well, it turns out that in this movie, there are no cannibals. It's just villagers that saw how corrupt society was getting that they decided to split from the world and make their own little society in the woods. This is what I mean by the false advertising for this movie. The people in this village try to sentence the characters for crimes that they committed against their people, even though their people were coming across as murderous hunters and dropped a tree on them and placed several traps, and they make it out like the characters are the murderers who should be on trial. And the characters never mention this as part of their defense, and they get punished. But I was happy when they were getting it because I hated all these characters anyway. Although it does make you wonder, why did they even have such deadly traps if they wanted our characters lined up like this? Their ways make no sense. And there comes a point where two of the characters have stayed in this village for 6 weeks, and the black guy gets indoctrinated and essentially becomes one of them. And when Karen says that she is going to leave, he says,
"Do you really think you can go back to your old life?"
and I'm like, you were only here for 6 weeks. Why are you acting so tortured and dramatic like you've lived here for years? Also, for a big chunk of the movie, the kills were done off screen, and all we saw were the aftermaths. When you compare that to the kills from the original Wrong Turn, where they were all done on screen, it really puts the so-called newer movie in perspective. And the bit where they enter the cannibal's house, they tried to redo that scene in the remake, and it was such a fleeting moment that it was honestly an insult. And it was treated like an afterthought. It was not treated like one of the biggest scenes from the original movie. And then we get a scene where our characters are in the middle of the woods with some of the masked people running around them, and this scene is just hilarious, because this is just like the scene from Ed, Edd and Eddy where Rolf is hunting the Eds and picking them off one at a time. I am not kidding.
Okay, Double D, let's get out of here.
Luis? Luis?
Okay, Double D, you can come out now.
Luis?
It's them. There's nobody there. Relax. There's nobody there. Relax.
No, it's fucking them! We have to go right now! We have to go!
It's the belly button eater! Help me! Belly button eater! Have mercy!
Do you know what's funny? Ed, Edd and Eddy actually did this scene much scarier. We all knew what was going on, but the music, the lighting, and the atmosphere of the scene was actually quite creepy, especially with how the scene starts with Double D being mysteriously taken right off the screen. The same thing happens in the Wrong Turn remake as well, and as you can imagine, it's not scary. And when stuff like this was far more shocking and well done in a 22-year-old Ed, Edd and Eddy episode, an episode that was deliberately making fun of horror tropes, then you know that you have done something horribly wrong. The horror in the new movie is nothing when compared to the original movie. I mean, in the original movie, there is a super intense scene where there is just 10 minutes of non-stop silence, and it is so intense. Nothing comes even close to this one scene in the remake. If anything, when these villagers suddenly show up and knock our characters out, me and my brothers just laughed. It comes across as so silly. So the movie with the far superior horror is Ed, Edd and Eddy. I'm just kidding. So the movie with the far superior horror is the original movie, the one that actually has cannibals in it. When I saw the trailer for the Wrong Turn remake, I was disinterested, but as I saw it, I was like, oh, they are keeping the look of the cannibals a secret. But then when I saw the movie, I found out that they weren't keeping the cannibals a secret. The reason they didn't show them is because there are no cannibals in the movie. So then how can you call it Wrong Turn? They should have told us there are no cannibals in this movie. If they did that, then I would have given them a little leeway. But they didn't. They let us assume that this was a movie with cannibals. And then when we laid down our money, in theaters don't forget, and took our seats, we would soon realize that we had been deceived. They knew exactly what they were doing, and that is just gross. The 2003 Wrong Turn is a classic, and I have seen it so many times, and I always have a fun time with it. I've only seen the second movie after that, and that movie was all kinds of messed up and disturbing, and then I just ignored the rest of the sequels. But after I saw the remake, I thought, wow, those sequels might actually not be the worst thing to happen to this franchise. It's time for the scores. The original Wrong Turn gets a 9 out of 10, and Wrong Turn the remake gets a 3. Now, I was originally going to give the remake a 1 out of 10, but strangely enough, the final act of the movie completely changed its tune, and it suddenly became a survival escape movie. And that felt so far removed from what Wrong Turn was, but it was more entertaining than the shit we were getting throughout the rest of the movie. And Karen here turned into a completely different character from the idiot she was in the first 2 acts. She essentially became Lara Croft, and the actress was even giving a much better performance than she did in the rest of the film, so that saved the movie from getting a 1 out of 10. It clearly turned into a completely different movie, but it was far more fun than what the movie was selling me the first hour and 20 plus minutes. Regardless though, whatever movie it turned into was not Wrong Turn. This movie has no right to be called that. It is false advertising to a sickening degree, and the fact that they actually were going to trick us with the marketing and then release this in theaters is unforgivable. So that's it for another video. I hope you guys appreciate the videos coming out at a faster rate. If things go to plan, I will hopefully have one more Versus video ready for you guys before I get to work on my Versus video of the Snyder Cut. So click that subscribe button and the bell right next to it so you can get notified about that. Thanks again for watching, guys. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really helps in getting my channel promoted by YouTube's algorithm, and I will hopefully catch all of you very soon. Take care.